Hi y'all. I thought it would be really cool to walk through the process I used to develop the art style that I will be using in the film that's going to be coming after Fear Rules This Forest, which is the one I'm working on now. Um, this was a challenge. I had a lot of trouble finding the style that would work best for this story and that would also be feasible to execute. So what I did, which is what I recommend anyone do when they run into, some kind of art block, is I did some studies. I collected a ton of references of, pictures of the setting that I'm trying to capture, which is this swamp environment that I'm trying to imbue with this mythological vibe. So you see that I did some sketches and then I went over and tried various like styles of finishing those drawings. So here what I'm doing ended up looking pretty much like the style that I ended up using for Fear Rules This Forest, and that just wasn't gonna work. One, it didn't have the right vibe. Two, it was just too similar to what I had already done. I wanted something unique for this story. So what I tried next was a more painterly option, which was a lot of fun to do. I think some of the colors really looked nice in this style, which was important to me. I want the colors to really shine in this story. But as you can see, it took a long time. So what I was trying to do next was find shortcuts to both get the visuals as clear as I could, but also to develop a style that I could feasibly execute hundreds of drawings of within my lifetime. I would like to be alive when I finish this film, and maybe even have time to make another one. So yeah, I really liked this test that I did. It, for a moment had me feeling like I was onto something, but I was having trouble getting the textures of the environment, all the foliage and leaves and etc. So I did a study. I looked up a picture of a really complex garden and drew over it to see what kind of textures exist in a natural environment, and then took what I learned and applied it to a quick sketch. And I was very happy with how this turned out. It took me a couple minutes to draw this tree you're watching now. I was able to add some fun details and some texture. So I think this is where I stopped for the day. And at that point, I was very optimistic. I thought I had found what was likely going to be the art style for the film. And here I'm messing around drawing the main character, or the design that I have in my mind at the moment. So here I'm using a color layer to see how the colors can look, because my next challenge was figuring out how I was going to approach the colors in this story. And it's relevant to the plot specifically because I need to capture the lush greenery, the lush environment that this is set in, and I need things to look green. And if you're familiar with my past works, you've probably noticed that I use a lot of monochrome color schemes, which is an artistic choice that I make mostly to save time. Choosing one color to set the tone and going from there can make it a lot easier to finish any backgrounds within a given time frame. But what I was realizing with this film is that it just wasn't looking green enough, frankly, with a monochrome color scheme. So I needed to branch out and develop more complex color schemes, which was a challenge for me because I'm a little rusty. But it was a lot of fun. I'm glad that I gave myself permission to do that. So after those experiments, I felt like I had developed a style that I liked, and I wanted to try executing it in an actual scene, essentially. So here I'm thumbnailing a potential image that I want to render in the art style I had developed. So I started with thumbnail, and then I went on to a sketch. I wanted a reasonably neat sketch so that I would know what I'm going in and trying to add details to with the painting. Yeah, I liked this composition. It was fun, and I think I captured the sense of depth that I was looking for and got a lot of the greenery I was hoping for. And then the next step I did was I went in and defined the value structure. So things are darker in the foreground and getting lighter towards the background, classic atmospheric perspective technique. And then I went over that with a color layer to kind of plan out how I was going to approach the colors, and then went in later painting. I believe I used the wash brush in Procreate. I made a couple what's the word? I customized it a bit, a couple customizations to get it to blend how I was wanting it to. And that worked out pretty well for me. But yeah, so I used 3 colors in this. I made use of the color harmony feature in Procreate. Thank goodness for that, because it's really helping me get back into my flow with more complex color schemes. It's been very helpful. Although I'm not really a fan of how these colors came out. I think they look okay together, but they just don't have the vibe that I need in this image. But the style, I do like it. I think it's very painterly. It reminds me of like the picture books that I used to read as a kid, which I think has the right tone that I'm looking for. Like mixing that with something a little darker, essentially, is what I'm going for. But as you can see, it took me forever. It almost took me all day doing that experiment, which I knew just wasn't going to work in practice of trying to do hundreds of these drawings for what is likely going to be my longest film yet. So a more complex style than I've used before, and a much longer runtime. Like, there's definitely sacrifices I need to make this film possible to make largely on my own. So here I'm trying it again, seeing if I can rush it, like rush the execution to get the same effect, but still within a reasonable time frame. And I'm also trying out a different color scheme. I think this one is a complementary one, and that worked well. As you can see, adding another color for the green to contrast against really helps the green sing a lot more, which is what I was looking for. So at least from this attempt, I gained that knowledge that for sure I'm going to need more complex color schemes than just the monochrome one. Yeah, and I like how this turned out. Very painterly, it's nostalgic to me for some reason. Probably because a lot of picture books I enjoyed as a kid utilized similar a similar aesthetic of painterly, sort of watercolory paintings with fairy tale vibes. Yeah. And I'm also trying to make the colors a little more complex in like where they are. It's not just a flat purple. I'm mixing in some other colors and other temperatures to help give the tree some texture, etc. And I think that technique worked very well, which I did end up using that in the final style that I came up with. Yeah, adding some colors and some greenery. The other thing that I learned doing this is that I needed to up how, like, saturated the environment is with other kinds of greenery, not just the trees. So the trees really needed to be covered in like moss and leaves, etc. And that definitely affected how I approached the next experiments. And I think that also, like, I can't leave that up to the paint stage for future reference. That needs to be done in the sketch layer. Also, something that I think I could do better is thinking about the animals that would be in this environment, and also how the people fit into it. So, starting, I believe this was now day 3, I went over on another sketch layer to try to improve on those things that I felt were missing in the last paint experiment. And here you see me trying a new color scheme. I really liked this one. This is where I tried a triadic color scheme, and I think that's the winner. Or at least it was for this image. And definitely adding a ton of greenery and stuff. And then you're also seeing me go over the sketch with a line art layer, which is something I'm typically not a fan of doing line art. It can be time consuming, and you know, a lot of times I find the line art doesn't do much that I can't achieve with just flat shapes. Or not always flat, but you get the idea, hopefully. I'm not sure how to make it more clear. But I was struggling with the painting because it was taking so long to really make my ideas clear in these drawings. So I decided to give line art a shot, and it didn't take terribly long, so it definitely cut the time in half. And then using flat colors behind the line art to give it the right vibe on top of that. Yeah, that was really quick to knock out, and it got me very far in getting the idea across. Then it was just adding a little bit of spice, a little bit of flavor, and I arrived at something that I really liked. You know, adding some complexity to the colors helped a lot. And I really like the style that it came up with. This I can believe will work in actually executing the film. So, yeah. You see me adding some, like, light shadowing, variation to the colors. I was very happy with this. And then the last thing I did was change the color of the line art, which I think really brings the whole thing together. So I'm very happy with this art style. Yeah. You can see me adding to the, like, blocks of color pieces of color from the other parts of the color scheme, and I think that also helps bring the image all together. And like there's definitely some things that I still kind of need to work out, how I handle the water and stuff, which maybe in this next image, if I had chosen a different composition, I could have given myself a better opportunity to work on that. But like I did earlier, having arrived at a style that I felt confident in, I wanted to try and execute it on another image and see if I could recreate that. And so here you see me doing the sketch for that. And what I was also trying to do was see how this would work in the plot of the story, because something relevant to the story is the state of the environment. We get introduced to it when it's thriving and green and lush and, like a paradise. And then we also see it later in a much more desolate state. So you see me drawing two versions of this scene, and I wanted to see a comparison of how I would execute that in this style. So it clearly affects the sketch layer as well as the rest of the image. So line art, of course. And this went pretty quickly. I was very pleased. It looks pretty good. Line art, it's, as much as I avoid it because of how shaky my hands can be, it is a safe bet half the time. I should probably use it more. Well, I mean, now that I think about it, I've definitely used it in all of my films at this point, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I did the line art, and this went pretty quickly, which is great because that means drawing hundreds of these images in this style is going to be more feasible for me to do on my own. And that definitely shows, because this experiment with these two images only took me a couple hours in the morning, and I was able to move on with my day and work on other projects, which is awesome. So then you see, I lay down blocks of color. I believe I was also using a triadic color scheme. Yes. Yeah, it pops up somewhere. And then I used a different color scheme to capture the desolate environment. How it starts to decay. So color definitely affects that as well. Then, going back in, I used the other colors in the color scheme to add some complexity to the flat colors. Give some texture, give some variation, and really show the different kinds of plant life that we're dealing with here. And I also used my brush strokes to try to show the volume of the tree. Not sure how successful I was with that, but it I think added, just the attempt added to the tone in a way that I liked. Yeah. And I think mixing in some contrasting colors to the green made it look so much more vibrant. So definitely a trick that I'm going to have to use in the future to brighten up the colors that I am using. Yeah. So you'll see it play out. Basically, the execution that I talked about developing, and I hope you enjoyed that walkthrough of the process that I used to arrive here. It was challenging. There was a lot to balance, the need for efficiency, because I will be doing hundreds of paintings like this, and I would like to finish the film someday, but also needing something that would work best for the story. You know, I want quality, but I also need it to be done. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed seeing that process. If you are an artist yourself and working on similar stuff, highly recommend this process. And if you'd like to see these specific, more specifics of these images, I recommend checking out my Patreon, where you can see the actual files. Yeah, so thank you for watching. Have a great day.